Blood spattered across the command deck viewscreen as Commander Grak's head exploded from the sniper round. One moment he stood there barking orders, the next his brain matter decorated our strategic holotable. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. The human assassin had accomplished in 5 seconds what our fleet had failed to do in 5 cycles: decapitate the Vrexian command structure. "Someone clean that up," I muttered, stepping over the twitching corpse of my former superior. "And get me a tactical assessment of the human position. My name is Zoltar Krev, First Lieutenant of the 7th Vrexian Armada, and I had just received an unexpected promotion. The war against humanity had been going poorly, but I never expected it would come to this. A single human infiltrator breaching our most secure facility. Impossible." "Sir," Lieutenant Draz called out nervously, "the human is still in the building." I laughed, not from humor, but from the absurdity of our situation. "Of course he is. Why would he leave? He's having too much fun picking us off one by one." The rest of the command staff stared at me with their 4 eyes blinking asynchronously, a sign of extreme stress among Vrexians. They weren't used to sarcasm. Our species prided itself on direct communication, but 5 cycles fighting humans had changed me. I picked up their habits, studied their ways. Perhaps that's why I was still alive. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Draz, mandibles clicking anxiously. "Lock down all access points, activate security drones, and get me everything we have on this human. I want to know who we are dealing with." The tactical display flickered to life, revealing security footage of a single human male moving through our facility with disturbing efficiency. He wasn't particularly large for his species, perhaps 1.8 meters tall with an average build, nothing like the hulking warriors of the Grak's Dominion or the venomous predators of Nistar Prime. By galactic standards, he appeared almost harmless. "Almost. Facial recognition complete," announced the computer. "Subject identified as Daniel Thorne, Human Special Forces. Classified as non-lethal asset in Galactic Threat Registry." "Non-lethal." I spat the words out like poison. "He just turned our commander into ceiling decoration." "How is that non-lethal?" "Classification based on physical attributes only, sir," replied the computer. "Humans lack natural weapons, venomous glands, enhanced strength, or biological defenses present in 94.3% of sentient predator species." I slammed my fist on the console. "Update that classification immediately. This non-lethal creature has killed 17 of our warriors today alone." The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. We Vrexians, with our armored exoskeletons, razor-sharp mandibles, and superior strength, had dismissed humans as weak when they first emerged onto the galactic stage. Our scientists classified them as defensive herd animals, physically unimpressive, relying on numbers rather than individual prowess. How wrong we had been. "Sir, the human has breached Level 7 security," reported Draz, voice trembling. "Level 7? That was just 2 floors below us." I felt a cold sensation in my thorax. What humans might call a chill down the spine. "Activate all combat drones," I ordered. "I want that human stopped before he reaches this floor." "Sir, we have already deployed 37 drones. He's disabled all of them." "How?" "Those drones are equipped with energy shields and plasma cannons." Draz played the security footage. The human moved like flowing water, anticipating each drone's attack pattern, using their own momentum against them. He carried minimal equipment: a projectile rifle, a blade, and what appeared to be improvised explosives, nothing particularly advanced by galactic standards. Yet he dismantled our security forces with terrifying precision. "I want to speak to him," I decided suddenly. My command staff stared at me as if I'd gone mad. Perhaps I had. "Establish communication," I insisted. The view screen flickered, and suddenly we were face to face with Daniel Thorne. He was taking cover in a maintenance corridor, reloading his primitive weapon. Blood, both his and Vrexian, stained his combat suit. His eyes narrowed when he saw me. "Well, if it isn't Lieutenant Krev," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. "Or should I say Commander now? Congratulations on the promotion." "How do you know my name?" I demanded. He smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "I know everything about your command structure. Kreven, I have been studying you for months. While you have been bombing our colonies from orbit, I have been learning your patterns, your protocols, your weaknesses. What do you want, human? Justice, he replied simply. Your armada destroyed 3 civilian colonies. 17,000 human lives wiped out because your commanders couldn't distinguish between military and civilian targets. I felt my insides twist. Those strikes had been ordered by Grek, not me. I had even questioned them, suggested more precise targeting. But orders were orders in the Vrexian military. I wasn't responsible for those attacks, I said. No? But you stood by and watched. You followed orders. On Earth we had a trial once. Centuries ago. The defendants claimed they were just following orders. That excuse didn't work then. It won't work now. A warning light flashed on my console. A human had planted explosives throughout the facility. The timer showed 3 minutes until detonation. You will die too if you blow this place up, I pointed out. He shrugged. Maybe, but I have completed my primary objective. Your command structure is in chaos. Your defense network has been compromised. And the rest of my team is currently disabling your fleet's main weapons systems. My blood ran cold. Team? What team? Our sensors only detected you. Thorne laughed, and the sound made my exoskeleton tighten around my body. That's because you were looking for biological signatures. Half my team isn't biological. The synthetic infantry doesn't show up on your outdated scanners. Artificial soldiers. Humans fought alongside machines. This violated every military doctrine in the galaxy. Sentient machines had been banned after the AI wars 3 millennia ago. But humans, being newcomers to the galactic community, apparently didn't care about ancient prohibitions. This facility houses 3,000 Vrexian personnel, I said desperately. Many are non-combatants. Scientists, engineers, medical staff. Something flickered across Thorne's face. Was it doubt? Regret? Unlike your commanders, I don't target civilians, he said after a pause. The explosives are precision placed to destroy your command capabilities and weapons systems only. Non-essential personnel have time to evacuate. The facility's emergency sirens began to wail. My staff looked to me for orders, but I stood frozen, assessing the human before me. He could have simply destroyed us without warning. Why the conversation? Why give civilians time to escape? Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because someone needs to deliver a message to your high command, Thorne replied. This is just the beginning. For every human colony you destroy, we will take out 10 of your military installations. We don't want this war, but we will finish it. The screen went dark, and I was left staring at my own reflection. Evacuation protocols. I barked, all non-essential personnel to escape pods immediately. Combat teams, secure the perimeter. As my staff scrambled to follow orders, I downloaded the command codes and strategic files to my personal device. If we survived this, a high command would need this intelligence. Sir, what about you? Asked Drays, hesitating at the door. I'm going after the human, I said, checking my plasma pistol. Someone has to slow him down. That's suicide, sir. Maybe, I admitted. But I need answers. And he might be our only chance to understand what we are really facing. I moved through the corridors of our dying command center, following the trail of destruction left by Daniel Thorne. Bodies of our warriors lay broken and twisted in positions that spoke of quick, efficient violence. Our species had evolved as apex predators on a harsh world. We were supposed to be among the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Yet one human had cut through our defenses like they were nothing. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly at least. Most of our personnel would escape before the explosives detonated, but our military capability in this sector would be crippled. The High Command would demand answers, and heads would roll, literally in our culture. I found Thorne in the hangar bay preparing a small craft for departure. His back was to me, a perfect shot. I raised my weapon, targeting systems locking onto his vital organs. I could kill you right now, I called out. He didn't even turn around. But you won't. What makes you so sure? Because you are curious, he replied, continuing his pre-flight checks. You want to know how one human infiltrated your most secure facility. You want to know what makes us different. He was right. Damn him. I lowered my weapon slightly. Then tell me. Now he turned, and I saw his face clearly for the first time. He looked tired. There was a deep scar running from his left temple to his jaw. His eyes held none of the savagery I expected from a creature that had killed so many of my kind. Your military classified us as non-lethal, he said. That was your first mistake. You looked at our bodies and saw weakness. No claws, no venom, no natural armor. What you failed to understand is that we didn't evolve physical weapons because we created artificial ones instead. Many species use technology, I countered. Not like we do. For most species, technology is an extension of natural abilities. For us, it's a replacement for abilities we never had. We have been the underdogs in our own evolutionary story from the beginning. We survived by outthinking predators faster and stronger than ourselves. An explosion rocked the facility. The first charges were detonating in the distant sections. You have 2 minutes before this place is space dust, Thorne said calmly. You should go. Why are you letting me live? Because someone needs to tell your leaders what happened here. Someone needs to explain that this war can end, but only if you stop targeting our civilians. I considered shooting him anyway. It would be easy, but something held me back. We underestimated you, I admitted. But that won't happen again. Corvan climbed into his ship. Yes, it will, because you still don't understand what makes humans dangerous. It's not our weapons or our technology. It's this. He tapped his temple. We think differently than you. We see patterns you miss. We improvise when your military doctrine calls for standard responses. And most importantly, we learn from our enemies. The hangar doors began to open, revealing the blackness of space beyond. One last thing, Commander Krev. Thorne called out as his ship's engines flared to life. Check the databases. I didn't destroy. Look up Earth history. Study how humans fought each other before we reached the stars. It might help you survive what's coming. His ship shot forward, disappearing into space. I stood there for a long moment before reality reasserted itself. The explosions were getting closer. I had maybe a minute to reach an escape pod. As I ran through the disintegrating facility, Thorne's words echoed in my mind. The databases I didn't destroy. He had deliberately left some of our information systems intact. Why? What was in our historical archives about Earth that he wanted me to see? I barely made it to the escape pod in time. As my small craft ejected from the doomed command center, I watched through the viewport as the massive structure broke apart in a series of precision explosions. Thousands of escape pods launched in all directions, carrying the survivors to safety. The human had kept his word. The destruction was targeted, minimizing civilian casualties. Alone in my pod, I accessed the files that remained in my personal device. I searched our historical database for information about Earth's military history, not expecting to find much. We had only encountered humans 5 cycles ago, and our intelligence on them was limited. What I found chilled me to my core. Humans had spent most of their history fighting each other. While most species unified early in their development, humans had remained divided into competing factions well into their technological age. They had thousands of years of experience in warfare against enemies who thought exactly like them. They had honed their strategies against themselves and the brutality of their conflicts. The scale of destruction they had inflicted upon their own planet and their own kind was almost incomprehensible. World wars that engulfed their entire planet, weapons of mass destruction that could annihilate cities in seconds, guerrilla campaigns where vastly outnumbered forces defeated superior enemies through cunning and persistence. I began to understand what made Daniel Thorne and his kind so dangerous. They had evolved not just physically but culturally and strategically. In an environment of constant conflict, they had developed a form of warfare that didn't rely on superior strength or natural weapons, but on understanding the enemy, exploiting weaknesses, and striking where least expected. The Vrexian High Command had labeled humans as non-lethal based on their physical attributes. But Daniel Thorne had proven how meaningless that classification was. He had decimated our forces not through brute strength but through strategy and precision. As my escape pod drifted through space, waiting for rescue, I composed my report to the High Command. I would tell them everything that had happened. I would explain what I had learned about humans and their unique approach to warfare, and I would warn them that unless we radically changed our understanding of this species, we were doomed to defeat. The humans had a saying. I discovered in my research, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. We had judged humans by the size of their claws, not by the power of their minds or the ferocity of their will. That mistake had cost us a command center, a significant portion of our fleet, and the lives of many warriors. It would not happen again, not if I had anything to say about it. My communications system pinged, indicating a rescue vessel had locked onto my pod's beacon. Soon I would face the High Command and deliver my report. I would have to explain how one non-lethal human had outmaneuvered our entire security apparatus. But first, I needed to understand more. I returned to the historical files, searching for patterns, looking for insight into human military thinking. There had to be a weakness, a flaw in their approach that we could exploit. Instead, I found something far more disturbing. Humans didn't just fight differently than other species. They actually seemed to thrive on conflict. Revrexians and most other species sought to minimize warfare through overwhelming force and clear hierarchies. Humans had developed countless different military doctrines, constantly evolving their tactics. They called it adaptive warfare, and Daniel Thorne had been its perfect embodiment. The rescue ship docked with my escape pod. As the airlock cycled open, I made a decision. I would not just report what had happened. I would request command of a special task force dedicated to studying human warfare. Because if we were to survive this conflict, we needed to start thinking like the enemy. And that, I suspected, would be the most alien concept my species had ever attempted to grasp. Commander Krev greeted the rescue team leader. The High Command is waiting for your report. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Tell them I have important information about the humans. Tell them everything we thought we knew is wrong. The Vrexian nodded, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. And the human who did this. Was he captured or killed? Neither, I replied grimly. He escaped, and I believe he's just getting started. As we departed for High Command headquarters, I gazed out at the debris field that had once been our most secure military installation. Thousands of years of Vrexian military dominance had taught us to rely on our natural advantages. But humans had evolved without such advantages. They had compensated with ingenuity, adaptability, and a ruthless efficiency that we had never needed to develop. The war had just entered a new phase, and for the first time since the conflict began, I wasn't certain we would win. But I was certain of one thing. I would never underestimate a human again. The grand hall of the Vrexian High Command loomed before me, its ancient stone walls carved with the victories of our species across 20,000 cycles of interstellar dominance. Ironic that I now stood here to report our most humiliating defeat. 3 days had passed since the destruction of Command Center Vorax 7. 3 days of debriefings, medical examinations, and psychological evaluations. The High Command wanted to ensure I wasn't compromised, that the human hadn't somehow influenced my mind. Such was their disbelief that a single enemy operative could accomplish what Daniel Thorne had done. Enter Commander Krev, boomed the voice of Supreme Leader Trzak. I straightened my posture, my newly polished commander insignia catching the light as I marched into the hall. 12 members of the High Command sat in a semicircle on elevated platforms, their massive forms dwarfing my own. As a frontline officer, I had never directly addressed them before. Few had and lived to tell about it. Supreme Leader, honored commanders, I began, my voice steady despite the churning in my gut. I come before you to report on the attack on Vorax 7 and to present my analysis of the human threat. Trzak leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing to slits. We have reviewed the security footage, Commander. Explain how one human breached our most secure facility. With respect, Supreme Leader, that is precisely the question we must answer if we hope to win this war. A murmur ran through the assembled commanders. Such directness bordered on insubordination. But I had not survived an encounter with Daniel Thorne to cower before my own leaders. You have 7 minutes, Trzak declared. Impress us, or join your predecessor. The threat wasn't subtle. Failure in the Brexian military was punishable by death. Commander Grax's remains had likely been processed for nutrient reclamation already. Our species was nothing if not efficient. I activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Footage from Vorax 7 played out in 3 dimensions, showing Thorne's systematic dismantling of our defenses. The human known as Daniel Thorne was classified as a non-lethal asset in our threat registry, I began. This classification, based solely on physical attributes, represents our fundamental misunderstanding of human warfare. I paused the footage at a moment showing Thorne disabling 3 security drones simultaneously. Humans evolved as persistence predators on a planet with extraordinary biodiversity. While they lack natural weapons, they developed something far more dangerous: adaptability. Where we Vrexians evolved specific responses to specific threats, humans evolved general solutions to unpredictable challenges. Commander Rax, the eldest of the High Command, snorted derisively. You speak as if these soft-skinned creatures are superior to us, yet we have conquered 17 star systems while they barely control their home system. Not superior, Commander. Different, I replied carefully. And that difference makes them unpredictable to us. Our military doctrine is based on overwhelming force applied according to established protocols. Humans, however, specialize in asymmetric warfare. I shifted the display to show Earth historical records we had obtained through intelligence operations. Throughout their history, humans have fought countless wars against themselves. Unlike most species who unified early in their development, humans remained fractured into competing nations well into their technological era. This forced them to develop strategies for fighting enemies who thought like them, who had access to similar technology, and who could anticipate standard tactics. The display showed images from Earth's brutal history, their world wars, guerrilla conflicts, urban combat scenarios. The High Command watched with growing unease. In short, I continued, while we were perfecting ways to dominate physically inferior species, humans were perfecting ways to defeat enemies with similar or superior capabilities to their own. Supreme Leader Trazak tapped his clawed fingers against his armrest. You have made your point about their history, Commander, but what of their current capabilities? Our intelligence suggests their fleet is a fraction of the size of ours, their weapons technologically inferior. Their conventional forces are indeed outmatched, Supreme Leader, but conventional warfare is not how they intend to defeat us. I displayed the final communication from Daniel Thorne. The human told me to study their history, and I have. They excel at what they call force multiplication, using small, elite units to disable critical infrastructure and command capabilities. Vorax 7 was not an isolated incident. In the 3 days since the attack, we have lost communication with 7 other command facilities across the Orion Arm. This revelation caused an uproar among the High Command. Trazak slammed his fist down, restoring order. Why are we only hearing of this now? He demanded. Because each facility reported communications failure as a technical malfunction, I explained. Only when viewed collectively does the pattern emerge. The humans are systematically blinding us, cutting off our command structure one node at a time. Commander Vax rose to his full height, towering over the others. This is absurd. You suggest a handful of humans are outmaneuvering our entire military. I have led campaigns that crushed civilizations more advanced than these primates. With respect, Commander, I replied, those civilizations fought according to the same basic principles as we do. Humans do not. I displayed another piece of footage, one I had discovered buried in our intelligence archives. It showed a human military exercise from before our species made contact. A small team infiltrating a hardened facility, much as Thorne had done at Vorax 7. This training exercise occurred 20 Earth years before we encountered their species. They were preparing for us before they knew we existed, not specifically for Vexians, but for any technologically advanced hostile force. Their fiction, their entertainment, their military planning, all centered around scenarios where they faced superior extraterrestrial threats. The silence in the Grand Hall was deafening. The implications were disturbing on a profound level. Vexians, like most spacefaring species, had expanded outward with the assumption of inherent superiority. We had never encountered a species that had spent its entire history preparing to be the underdog. "What do you propose, Commander Craig?" Trazak finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "A complete revision of our approach to this war," I stated firmly. "We must abandon large-scale assaults on human positions and focus on securing our command infrastructure. We must develop new protocols for facility security that do not rely on predictable response patterns. And most importantly, we must establish a specialized task force to study human combat tactics and develop countermeasures." I paused, knowing my next statement could either secure my position or condemn me to death. "And I recommend immediate cessation of attacks on human civilian targets. Such actions only strengthen their resolve and provide moral justification for their asymmetric warfare." Commander Vex hissed in outrage. "You suggest we show weakness, that we allow their provocation to go unanswered?" "I suggest we fight intelligently rather than reactively," I countered. "Every civilian colony we destroy creates 1,000 Daniel Thornes, each burning with righteous fury and willing to die to exact revenge." Supreme Leader Trazak studied me with an intensity that made my exoskeleton feel too tight. "You speak of these humans with almost admiration, Commander Kreve. One might question where your loyalties lie." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I had anticipated this response, prepared for it. "My loyalty is to the survival of our species, Supreme Leader. And I believe that continuing this war as we have been fighting it leads to our extinction." I displayed the final set of data projections based on current loss rates and the accelerating effectiveness of human counterattacks. At current attrition rates, accounting for the disruption to our command structure, we will be pushed back to our core systems within 2 cycles. Our numerical advantage means nothing if we cannot coordinate our forces effectively. The data spoke for itself. Even the most hawkish members of the High Command could not deny the trend lines. After a long silence, Trazak nodded slowly. "You have given us much to consider, Commander Krev. You are dismissed while we deliberate." I bowed and turned to leave, uncertain whether I would be summoned back to receive a new command or an execution order. 4 hours later, I had my answer. "Commander Krev," announced Trazak when I returned to the Grand Hall, "the High Command has reached a decision. You will lead a new division dedicated to understanding and countering human warfare tactics. You will have access to all necessary resources and personnel." I felt a surge of relief, quickly tempered by his next words. "However, we reject your recommendation to cease attacks on human civilian targets. Such attacks will continue as a means of drawing out their military forces and compelling them to engage in conventional warfare where our superiority can be brought to bear." My mandibles clenched in frustration, but I maintained my composure. "As you command, Supreme Leader." "When do I begin?" "Immediately. Your first assignment awaits you in Briefing Chamber 3. I bowed and exited, my mind racing. They had given me what I asked for, but refused the one recommendation that might actually prevent catastrophe. The High Command still did not truly understand what we were facing. The briefing chamber was dimly lit when I entered, a single figure waiting for me beside the tactical display. I recognized him immediately. General Kraze, the most decorated intelligence officer in Drexian history. "Commander Krev," he greeted me, not bothering with formalities. "I reviewed your presentation to the High Command. Impressive analysis, though I suspect you withheld certain insights." I tensed. "Sir?" Kraz manipulated the display, bringing up an image that made my blood freeze. Daniel Thorne in the flesh, captured on a security feed from Vex Station, our primary naval depot in the Arcturus sector. The timestamp showed it was taken 6 hours ago. "Your human friend has been busy," Kraz noted. "This facility was attacked 3 hours after this image was captured. 27 warships disabled, their navigation systems corrupted with a virus of unknown origin. No casualties, interestingly enough. The humans specifically targeted unmanned systems." I studied the image carefully. "He's sending a message, showing that he could have killed everyone on the station but chose not to." "Indeed. And what message would that be, Commander?" "That this isn't about extermination. It's about forcing us to the negotiating table." Kraz nodded slowly. A conclusion I had reached as well. The High Command, however, interprets it as weakness. They believe the humans lack the resolve to do what is necessary to win this war. They are wrong, I said flatly. Humans are capable of extraordinary brutality when pushed too far. Their history is rife with examples, but they prefer to exercise restraint when possible. A cultural preference we would be wise to understand. Krit agreed. Which brings me to your first assignment. He handed me a data crystal containing classified files. We have captured a human, he stated. Not just any human, but a military strategist named Alexandra Reeves. She was leading a diplomatic mission to the Centauri Accord worlds when our forces intercepted her vessel. My eyes widened. The High Command authorized the capture of a diplomatic envoy? That violates every principle of galactic law. The High Command is growing desperate, Commander Krev. They do not admit it publicly, but the loss of 7 command centers has shaken them. They seek leverage, a way to force the humans to engage on our terms. I examined the file on Alexandra Reeves. Her credentials were impressive. Former military, specialist in extraterrestrial psychology, architect of humanity's diplomatic protocols for first contact scenarios. What am I to do with this prisoner? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Extract information, Kraz replied. Learn how they think, how they plan their operations. The High Command believes torture will be necessary, but I suspect a mind like yours might find more creative approaches. I fought to keep my expression neutral. Torture was standard procedure for Vrexian interrogations, but everything I had learned about humans suggested it would be counterproductive. Where is she being held? Detention Center Primaris, Level 9. You have full authority to use whatever methods you deem necessary. Results are expected within 10 cycles. After Kraz departed, I stood alone in the briefing room, contemplating my options. The High Command had given me an opportunity, not the one I had hoped for, but perhaps one I could use to change the course of this war. Detention Center Primaris was a fortress within a fortress, buried beneath the capital city of Vrex Prime. Few who entered its lower levels ever emerged again. As I passed through the numerous security checkpoints, each requiring genetic and neurological verification, I prepared myself for what was to come. The human Alexandra Reeves was being held in an isolation chamber designed for particularly dangerous prisoners. The walls could absorb tremendous kinetic energy, neutralizing even the strongest captives. For a physically unimposing human, it was absurd overkill. But then we had all seen what Daniel Thorne had accomplished. Disable the monitoring devices. I ordered the guard captain. He blinked his 4 eyes in confusion. Sir, all interrogations must be recorded for. This is a matter of highest security, I interrupted. Direct order from General Craze. No recordings. Reluctantly, the captain complied, deactivating the surveillance systems. When the confirmation lights winked out, I entered the chamber alone. Alexandra Reeves sat calmly at a metal table, her hands bound by energy restraints. She was older than Thorne, perhaps in her 5th or 6th decade of life, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back severely from a face lined with experience. Her eyes, a piercing blue, assessed me with unnerving precision. Commander Krev, I presume, she said in perfect Vrexian, her pronunciation flawless. Your reputation precedes you. I concealed my surprise. Few non-Vrexians could speak our language, with its complex clicks and tonal variations. Dr. Reeves, I acknowledged, taking the seat opposite her. You have me at a disadvantage. Hardly, I'm the one in restraints. And yet you seem remarkably unconcerned by your situation. She smiled thinly. Concern would be wasted energy. Either you are here to torture me, in which case I have been prepared for that possibility, or you are here to talk, in which case we have much to discuss. I deactivated her restraints with a press of a button. Another calculated risk. I'm here to understand, I told her. Why did you allow yourself to be captured? A diplomatic vessel with your credentials could have easily avoided our patrol routes. Her eyebrows raised slightly. What makes you think my capture wasn't accidental? Because I have studied your people enough now to recognize a deliberate move when I see one. Daniel Thorne taught me that much. At the mention of Thorne, something flickered across her face. Recognition. Concern. It was gone too quickly for me to interpret. You have met Major Thorne, she stated. Briefly, before he destroyed one of our most secure military installations and escaped. And yet you survived the encounter. Interesting. We studied each other for a long moment, predator to predator, though her predatory nature was far less obvious than mine. Why are humans targeting our command centers but leaving our civilian populations untouched? I asked finally. The same reason a surgeon removes a tumor but leaves healthy tissue intact, she replied. We have no quarrel with your people, Commander, only with your leadership and their decisions. You speak of surgical precision, yet your kind can be extraordinarily destructive. Your history is full of atrocities. Yes, she cut me off. We have made catastrophic mistakes, genocides, world wars, environmental disasters. We have looked into the abyss of our own capacity for destruction and decided to step back from that precipice. She leaned forward, her intensity palpable despite her physically unthreatening appearance. That's the difference between us, Commander. Human Vaxians have always been apex predators, secure in your physical superiority. You never had to question your methods or your morality, because you were always on top. Humans had to learn restraint the hard way, through bitter experience. Her words echoed my own analysis uncomfortably closely. The High Command believes your tactical approach targeting command centers while avoiding civilian casualties demonstrates weakness, I told her. She actually laughed at that. Of course they do. They think like apex predators. Show complete dominance or show weakness. No middle ground. How do humans think? Like survivors. Like underdogs who had to use their brains because their bodies weren't enough. We think in terms of minimum necessary force to achieve our objectives, which are peace, ultimately, but we will settle for deterrence in the short term. I considered her words carefully. They aligned with everything I had observed and researched about human military philosophy. You still haven't answered my question, I pressed. Why did you allow yourself to be captured? Alexandra Reeves sighed, suddenly looking tired. Because someone needed to talk to your leadership directly. To explain that this war is unnecessary and that its continuation threatens both our species. You could have requested formal diplomatic channels. We tried 6 times. Your High Command ignored or rejected every overture. This was news to me, but not entirely surprising. The High Command was not known for diplomatic flexibility. And you believed getting captured would achieve this dialogue? The High Command has no intention of speaking with you. They sent me here to extract information through whatever means necessary. Yet here we are, talking, she pointed out. And you are recording everything to present to your superiors, I assume? I tensed. The monitoring systems are disabled. The official ones. Yes. But you are wearing a personal recording device. Aren't you? Standard procedure for intelligence officers in high-value interrogations. She was right, of course. I had activated my implanted recorder before entering, planning to review our conversation privately before deciding what to report to the High Command. What exactly do you hope to achieve, Dr. Reeves? Understanding, she replied simply, and to deliver a warning. Which is, the attacks on your command centers are just the first phase. If your leadership continues targeting our civilian colonies, we will be forced to escalate, not against your civilians. We maintain that moral line, but your military infrastructure, your supply chains, your communication networks, all of it will be systematically dismantled. With what? Your fleet is outnumbered 10-1. We don't need fleets for what comes next, Commander. Just ask yourself. If one human like Daniel Thorne could do what he did at Vorax 7, what could 100 such operatives accomplish? 1,000. The implications sent a chill through my exoskeleton. Our intelligence estimates suggested humans had at least 10,000 special operations personnel trained for deep space deployment. You are threatening guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale, I said, the concept almost incomprehensible to Vrexian military thinking. We are promising it, she corrected. Unless the attacks on our civilian populations cease immediately, the High Command will never bow to such threats. Then they will watch your empire collapse from within, she stated, not with malice but with something like regret. and millions will die needlessly on both sides. I stood abruptly, my mind racing with the implications of what she had revealed. This conversation is over for now. Think carefully about what I have said, Commander Krev, Alexandra called as I moved toward the door, and about which side of history you wish to stand on. Outside the detention chamber, I ordered the guard captain to maintain maximum security protocols, then made my way to my new office in the intelligence division. The recording of my conversation with Dr. Reeves weighed heavily in my mind. The High Command expected me to break her, to extract tactical information about human military capabilities. Instead, she had volunteered a strategic warning that confirmed my worst fears about the direction of this conflict. I needed more information before deciding my next move. Accessing the secure intelligence network, I searched for reports of unexplained incidents throughout Rexian-controlled space over the past 30 cycles. If human operatives were already infiltrating our territory as Alexander suggested, there would be evidence. The results were disturbing. 43 instances of critical system failures across our military infrastructure. 17 supply vessels disappeared without distress calls. 12 communication relays knocked offline by what appeared to be software corruption. None of these incidents had been connected previously. Each was attributed to technical malfunction, crew error, or natural phenomena. But viewed collectively, through the lens of Alexandra's warning, a pattern emerged. The humans weren't just preparing for asymmetric warfare, they had already begun. And the High Command was still planning large-scale assaults on human positions, completely blind to the true nature of the threat. I compiled my findings into a comprehensive report, attaching the recording of my conversation with Alexander Reeves. This would either convince the High Command to reconsider their approach to the war, or it would cost me my life for suggesting such a radical shift in strategy. Before I could submit the report, however, my communication terminal chimed with an incoming priority message. General Kraz's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Commander Krev, report to Emergency Command Center immediately. We have a situation. What's happened, General? The detention center has been breached. Dr. Alexandra Reeves has escaped. My blood ran cold. Impossible. I left her under maximum security not 2 hours ago. Nevertheless, she is gone, and she left something specifically for you. When I arrived at the Emergency Command Center, the place was in chaos. Security personnel rushed in all directions, and the tactical displays showed facility-wide alerts. General Kraz led me to a private viewing room where a message was displayed on the screen. It was written in Vrexian script, but the syntax was unmistakably human. Commander Krev, thank you for the conversation. I have what I came for. The choice is now yours. Continue this war and watch your empire crumble from within, or help your leaders find a path to peace. You know which option ensures the survival of both our species. We will be waiting for your decision. AR. Beside the message was a list of coordinates, the locations of every major Rexian military installation in the galaxy, including many so secret their existence was known only to the highest levels of command. How did she access this information? I asked, stunned. We don't know, Krez admitted. The security systems show no unauthorized access to our databases. Yet somehow she obtained our most classified intelligence. And her escape? How was that accomplished? Kraz gestured to the security footage playing on another screen. It showed Alexander Reeves in her cell one moment, then empty space the next. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of how she had defeated the energy restraints or the reinforced walls. We are dealing with capabilities we don't understand, Kraz said quietly. Technology that makes no sense according to our understanding of physics. I thought back to what Daniel Thorne had said about his team. Half my team isn't biological. Could the humans have developed some form of matter transmission technology? Or perhaps Alexandra Reeves herself wasn't entirely biological. The High Command is convening an emergency session, Kraz continued. This breach has shaken them deeply. Perhaps now they will listen to your recommendations. I nodded, my mind already racing ahead to what I would say to them. The evidence was now irrefutable. We were fighting an enemy that operated by entirely different rules, an enemy that could penetrate our most secure facilities at will. There's one more thing, Kraz added, his voice dropping even lower. 4 minutes after Reeves escaped, we detected a massive energy surge in orbit around Vrix Prime. When our sensors cleared, we discovered that 3 of our orbital defense platforms had been altered. Altered how? Their weapon systems have been reconfigured to target each other. Any attempt to fire on incoming vessels will result in the platforms destroying each other instead. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just infiltrated our most secure detention facility, they had compromised our planetary defenses as well. They could have destroyed the platforms entirely, I noted. Instead, they merely neutralized them as threats while leaving them intact. Another demonstration of their surgical approach, Kraz agreed. What troubles me most is not what they did but what it suggests they could do if pushed further. As we made our way to the High Command Chamber, I reflected on Alexandra's words. The choice is now yours. Continue this war and watch your empire crumble from within, or help your leaders find a path to peace. The Vrexian Empire had stood for 20,000 cycles, conquering all who opposed us. We had never known defeat, never contemplated the possibility that a physically inferior species could challenge our dominance. Yet here we were, our most secure facility breached, our most classified information compromised, our planetary defenses neutralized, all without a single shot fired. The High Command would have to listen now. They would have to understand that this war could not be won through conventional means, that the humans, with their strange, adaptable approach to warfare, had changed the rules of engagement in ways we were only beginning to comprehend, and I would be the one to make them see this truth, however unpalatable it might be to their pride. As the massive doors to the High Command Chamber swung open, I straightened my posture and prepared to deliver the most important briefing of my life, perhaps the most important in the history of our species. The future of the Vrexian Empire now depended on our ability to understand an enemy we had foolishly labeled non-lethal. An enemy who had proven with terrifying efficiency just how wrong we had been. Silence filled the grand hall of the High Command, as the holographic display showed the full extent of our strategic catastrophe. 3-dimensional representations of compromised installations blinked red across the galactic map, a crimson wave spreading through Vrexian territory like a metastasizing cancer. "Impossible," whispered Commander Vox, his voice barely audible. "This cannot be happening." But it was. In the 7 cycles since Alexander Reeves' escape from our most secure detention facility, human strike teams had systematically disabled 23 additional command centers. Not destroyed, disabled. Communications arrays severed. Weapon systems rendered inoperable. Navigation computers wiped clean. In each case, military personnel were given time to evacuate before critical systems were compromised. The humans were being merciful, and that terrified the High Command more than any show of force could have. Supreme Leader Trazak's massive fist slammed down on his command console. "We have deployed the 7th Fleet to the Arcturus sector. We will crush these humans once and for all." I kept my expression neutral, though inwardly I cringed at the futility of it. The 7th Fleet, 47 capital ships, over 300 support vessels, the pride of our naval forces, and completely vulnerable to the type of asymmetric warfare the humans had perfected. "Supreme Leader," I began carefully, "conventional fleet deployments will not—" "Silence, Commander Krev," Trazak roared. "Your analysis of the human threat has proven worthless. You assured us you could develop countermeasures, yet the situation has only deteriorated. I recommended cessation of attacks on human civilian targets as the first step," I reminded him, knowing I was risking my life but unable to remain silent. Instead, the High Command authorized the bombardment of 3 additional human colonies in the past cycle alone. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Challenging the Supreme Leader's decisions so directly was unprecedented. General Kraz stepped forward, his position as head of intelligence providing some protection against Trazak's legendary wrath. "Commander Kraz's assessment is accurate. Supreme Leader, our continued targeting of human civilian populations has only accelerated their military response. Their special operations forces appear to be prioritizing targets based on which of our command centers coordinated those bombardments. They are primitives," Trazak insisted. "Their technology is inferior, their numbers insignificant compared to ours. This is merely a temporary setback. Before Kraz could respond, the emergency alert system activated. A communication officer burst into the chamber, his exoskeleton pale with stress. Supreme Leader, the 7th Fleet reports widespread system failures across all vessels. Weapons offline, propulsion systems compromised, life support functioning at minimal levels. The timing couldn't have been more devastating to Trazak's position. The fleet he had just referenced as our solution to the human problem was now adrift in space, defenseless. How? Demanded Trazak, his voice hollow with disbelief. How could they neutralize an entire fleet without firing a shot? I stepped forward, pulling up the intelligence reports I had compiled. Computer virus, sir, introduced through routine software updates 3 cycles ago. It remained dormant until activated remotely. We discovered similar code in the systems of previously compromised installations, but the fleet was already underway before we could issue a warning. 3 cycles ago, Commander Vax hissed. They planned this attack before we even engaged their colonies in the Arcturus sector. They anticipated our response patterns, I confirmed. Just as they have at every stage of this conflict, the Grand Hall erupted into chaotic arguments, accusations, and demands for action. Supreme Leader Trazak sat motionless, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display showing his prized fleet now little more than metal husks floating in the void. Only General Kraz remained calm, moving to stand beside me. You expected this, he said quietly. Not a question but an observation. I warned that conventional deployments would be ineffective against their tactics, I replied, though I did not anticipate they would be able to compromise an entire fleet simultaneously. Then what do you anticipate next, Commander Krev? Kaz asked, his voice barely audible over the shouting match between the other leaders. What is their endgame? Before I could answer, the holographic display in the center of the room flickered, the image of our crippled fleet replaced by something that should have been impossible. A direct transmission, bypassing all our security protocols, originating from within human territory. The room fell silent as the face of Daniel Thorne appeared before us. Greetings, Vraxian High Command, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. I trust I have your attention now. Supreme Leader Trazak rose to his full height, rage emanating from every plate of his exoskeleton. How dare you infiltrate our communications? This violation will— Spare me the threats, Thorne interrupted, his tone almost bored. Your 7th Fleet is currently dead in space. Your command centers are compromised. Your secure communications have been monitored for the past 3 cycles. You are in no position to make threats. The audacity of it! A single human addressing the Rexian High Command as if they were errant children sent shockwaves through the chamber. What do you want? General Kraz asked, stepping forward as the only one composed enough to engage. The same thing we have wanted from the beginning, Thorne replied. An end to this unnecessary conflict. Your fleet is disabled but intact. Your military personnel are unharmed. We could have destroyed your ships, killed your soldiers, but that was never our objective. Then what is your objective? I found myself asking, drawn into the conversation despite protocol. Thorne's eyes found mine through the transmission. Commander Krev, I see you survived our last encounter. Good. Perhaps you have explained to your leaders by now what they are really facing. I have tried, I admitted, ignoring the glares from the High Command. Then let me be perfectly clear, Thorne continued, addressing the entire room again. Humanity does not want your territory. We don't want your resources. We don't want conquest or subjugation. We simply want to exist without threat of extinction. He manipulated something off-screen, and the display split to show footage of the most recent bombardment of a human colony. Buildings collapsed under orbital fire, civilians running in terror, atmospheric processors rupturing and spewing toxic gases across settlement domes. This ends now, Thorne stated, his voice hardening. The destruction of our civilian populations stops immediately, or we will be forced to demonstrate just how vulnerable your own civilian worlds truly are. Supreme Leader Trazak found his voice again. You claim moral superiority while threatening our civilians? Your hypocrisy is— We are threatening nothing, Thorne cut him off. We are stating a fact. We have shown remarkable restraint thus far, targeting only military installations and command structures. That restraint has a limit. The implications hung in the air like a blade. If the humans could penetrate our most secure facilities, disable our most powerful fleets without firing a shot, what else were they capable of? As a show of good faith, Thorne continued, we are transmitting the security codes that will allow you to restore basic functions to your 7th Fleet. Life support will remain stable, and propulsion systems will have enough power for them to return to the nearest Vrexian port. Weapons, however, will remain offline. Data streamed across a secondary display, verification protocols confirming its authenticity. They were genuinely providing the means to save our stranded fleet. You have 48 standard hours to initiate peace negotiations through the Centauri Accord mediators, Thorne concluded. After that time, we will proceed with the next phase of operations. I suggest you choose wisely. The transmission ended, plunging the Grand Hall into stunned silence. Supreme Leader Trezak was the first to recover, his rage palpable. This is outrageous. We will not be dictated to by primitives. They are not primitives, I said quietly. But in the silence my words carried to every corner of the room. That's what I have been trying to explain. They are different, not inferior. And they have just demonstrated that they can cripple our most powerful military assets at will. General Craze nodded in agreement. The security codes they provided are genuine. They have had access to our most classified systems for months, possibly longer. This is not a position from which we can dictate terms. Commander Vax, the most hawkish member of the High Command, surprised me by speaking next. Perhaps we should consider their offer of negotiations. The chamber erupted again, arguments flying back and forth. I stood silently, watching the unthinkable unfold. The Vrexian High Command, for the first time in 20,000 cycles, contemplating the possibility that they might not be the dominant power in a conflict. In the midst of the chaos, my personal communicator vibrated against my wrist. A message, origin unknown, text only. Observation deck, North Quadrant, 10 minutes. Come alone. I slipped out of the Grand Hall while the High Command continued their heated debate. The North Quadrant observation deck was rarely used, offering views of the capital city rather than the more impressive mountain ranges to the south. The perfect place for a clandestine meeting. The deck was empty when I arrived. The lights dimmed to conserve energy during the off-peak hours. I moved to the center of the circular platform, every sense alert for danger. Your leaders are still debating whether to negotiate or escalate, said a familiar voice behind me. Which do you think they will choose? I turned slowly to find Alexander Reeves leaning against the doorframe, appearing completely at ease despite being in the heart of the Vrexian capital. She wore the same clothing as during our interrogation session, showing no signs of her miraculous escape or subsequent activities. How did you get in here? I asked, already knowing she wouldn't provide a useful answer. The same way I got out of your detention center, she replied with a slight smile. But that's not important right now. What matters is whether your High Command is going to make the right decision before more lives are lost. I considered calling for security but dismissed the thought immediately. If she could penetrate our defenses so easily, a security team would only complicate matters. They are divided, I told her honestly. Trezak refuses to accept that we might not win this conflict through conventional means. Others are beginning to see reason. And you? She asked, stepping closer. What do you believe is the right course of action? I believe this war was a mistake from the beginning, I admitted. We underestimated your species, classified you incorrectly, and applied the wrong strategy as a result. The logical course now is to negotiate while we still have some leverage. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. Then I have something to show you. From her pocket she withdrew a small holographic projector and activated it. The image that appeared between us showed a Vrexian colony world, Krefet Prime, my home planet. 3 days ago, a human operative infiltrated the central atmospheric processing facility on Krevita Prime, she explained. He planted a device that could, with remote activation, introduce a toxin into the air circulation system. It would kill approximately 93% of the Vrexian population within hours. My blood ran cold. Krevita Prime was home to over 6 billion Vrexians, including many of my own genetic lineage. You claim to want peace, yet you plant weapons of mass destruction on our civilian worlds? I hissed, mandibles clicking in distress. The device was removed yesterday, she continued, ignoring my outburst. It was never armed, never intended for use. It was placed there to prove a point, then extracted once that point was made. What point? That we could have been fighting this war very differently from the beginning, she said simply. We could have targeted your civilian populations through methods you couldn't defend against. But we chose not to. The holographic image shifted to show other Rexian worlds, each with a timestamp and brief description of vulnerabilities identified, infiltrations completed, and extraction of non-activated weapons. 12 worlds, Alexander stated. 12 opportunities to inflict casualties in the billions, all passed up in favor of precisely targeted strikes against military infrastructure. I stared at the evidence before me, my mind racing to process the implications. Why are you showing me this? Why not include it in Thorne's message to the High Command? Because threats only entrench some leaders further, she replied. Trzak would see this as more reason to fight, not to negotiate. But you understand what it really means. And I did. The humans had possessed the means to cripple our civilization from the beginning but had deliberately chosen a more difficult path, one that minimized loss of life while still achieving their strategic objectives. What do you want from me? I asked finally. Your help, she said. When the High Command votes on whether to accept our offer of negotiations, they will be divided. Your voice could tip the balance. My voice carries little weight compared to the Supreme Leaders, but General Kraz respects your analysis, and several others are beginning to question Trzak's judgment after the 7th Fleet disaster. She was right. The balance of power within the High Command was shifting subtly but undeniably. For the first time in centuries, the Supreme Leader's authority was not absolute. If I help you, I said carefully, what assurances do I have that these negotiations will be conducted in good faith? That humans won't use this opportunity to press for greater concessions? None, Alexander admitted frankly, except for the evidence of our actions thus far. We could have demanded your surrender, but instead we are asking for peace talks. We could have destroyed your fleet, but we gave you the means to save your people. We could have attacked your civilian populations, but we focused exclusively on military targets. She deactivated the holographic projector and placed it on the observation deck railing between us. This contains all the evidence I have shown you, plus documentation of 17 separate occasions when human forces had the opportunity to inflict mass casualties on Vexian civilians, but chose not to. Review it, verify it independently if you can, then decide whether you believe we are negotiating in good faith. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Commander Krev. Daniel Thorne asked me to tell you something. What? He said. I remember what I told you about Earth history. Study how humans fought each other before we reached the stars. Have you done that yet? I nodded slowly. I have been researching your conflicts extensively. The pattern is always the same after periods of devastating warfare. Humans eventually find ways to establish peace, even with their most bitter enemies. Exactly, she said with approval. Our greatest wars eventually led to our strongest alliances. Remember that when you address the High Command. With that, she stepped back into the shadows of the corridor and disappeared as mysteriously as she had arrived. I remained on the observation deck for several minutes, turning the holographic projector over in my hands, weighing my options. The fate of my species might very well hinge on the decision I was about to make. When I returned to the Grand Hall, the debate had reached a fever pitch. Supreme Leader Trzak was bellowing about honor and Vrexian supremacy, while a growing faction led by Commander Vrax and General Kraz argued for pragmatic consideration of the human offer. The vote stands at 6-5 in favor of rejecting negotiations, Kraz informed me quietly as I took my place beside him. Your voice will make it a tie, forcing Trzak to either break the deadlock or consider alternatives. I nodded, gathering my thoughts as I waited for the appropriate moment to speak. The evidence Alexandra had provided was damning. Not of human aggression, but of Vrexian vulnerability. We had been at their mercy far more than we had realized. Commander Trzak called out suddenly, fixing his 4 eyes on me. You have studied these humans more than anyone. What is your assessment of their offer? Is it genuine, or a ploy to gain advantage? The chamber fell silent, all attention turning to me. This was the moment Alexandra had anticipated, the opportunity to influence the course of this conflict. Supreme Leader. Honored Commanders. I began, my voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. I believe the human offer of negotiations is genuine. And furthermore, I believe it represents our best hope for survival as a species. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, but I pressed on. I have compiled evidence that the humans have possessed the capability to inflict catastrophic casualties on our civilian populations from the earliest stages of this conflict, yet have consistently chosen not to employ such methods. I activated the holographic projector, displaying the information Alexandra had provided. The High Command watched in stunned silence as the data scrolled past dates, locations, vulnerabilities, infiltrations, all meticulously documented. This information comes from human sources, I acknowledged. But I have independently verified key portions through our own intelligence networks. The pattern is undeniable. The humans have been fighting a limited war while we have been fighting a total one. This proves nothing except their weakness. Trazek insisted, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. If they possessed such capabilities, they would have used them. No, Supreme Leader, I countered. It proves that they think differently than we do. Where we see restraint as weakness, they see it as strength. Where we seek total victory, they seek sustainable peace. I displayed a final piece of evidence, historical records from Earth showing the aftermath of their greatest conflicts. Former enemies becoming allies, trade replacing warfare, cooperation emerging from the ashes of devastating wars. Throughout their history, humans have demonstrated a remarkable capacity to forge peace, even after the most bitter conflicts. They are offering us that same opportunity now. I recommend we accept their terms for negotiations and end this war before it escalates beyond our capacity to control. The silence that followed was profound. Even Trazek seemed momentarily lost for words, the evidence before him challenging his most fundamental assumptions about warfare and dominance. I call for an immediate vote, General Kradz announced, seizing the moment. Do we accept the human offer of negotiations through Centauri Accord mediators? This time, the result was different. 8-4 in favor of accepting negotiations, with even Commander Vrax, once the most hawkish voice in the High Command, voting to pursue peace. Supreme Leader Trazek stood rigid, his authority directly challenged for the first time in his long reign. For a moment I feared he might reject the vote, triggering a constitutional crisis at the worst possible time. Instead, he simply nodded once, accepting the inevitable. Prepare the diplomatic protocols, he ordered. We will meet these humans at the negotiating table. But, he added, his voice hardening, we will do so from a position of strength. Commander Krev, you will lead our delegation. Your understanding of human psychology and tactics will be essential. It was both an honor and a subtle punishment. If the negotiations failed, I would bear the brunt of the blame, but it was also an opportunity I couldn't refuse. I accept, Supreme Leader. As the High Command dispersed to prepare for the unprecedented peace talks, General Kraz pulled me aside. That was well played, he said quietly. Though I suspect you had helped preparing your presentation, I neither confirmed nor denied his suspicion. The evidence speaks for itself, General. Indeed it does. He studied me thoughtfully. You realize, of course, that your career path has been irrevocably altered. Success or failure, you will never be viewed the same way again by the High Command. Some things are more important than career advancement, I replied. Kraz's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. A very human perspective, Commander. Perhaps that's why you are the right choice for this assignment. 2 days later, I found myself aboard a diplomatic vessel bound for the Centauri Accord neutral space station. My team consisted of military strategists, economic advisors, and cultural specialists, all hurriedly assembled as the Rexian Empire prepared for its first genuine peace negotiation in thousands of cycles. As our ship entered the neutral zone, I received a secure transmission from an unmarked vessel pacing us at a discreet distance. Commander Kriv, Daniel Thorne's face appeared on my private screen. Congratulations on your new assignment, Major Thorne, I acknowledged. I assume you will be part of the human delegation, along with Dr. Reeves and several others you haven't met yet. He studied me through the screen. How did the High Command take the decision to negotiate? About as well as you'd expect, I replied. Dryly, Supreme Leader Trzak is adjusting to the new reality. And you? Are you prepared for what comes next? I considered the question carefully. I'm prepared to work toward a sustainable peace, but I'm not naive about the challenges ahead. Rexian culture does not easily accommodate the concept of equality with other species. Neither did human culture, once upon a time, or noted. We had to learn that lesson the hard way, through centuries of conflict among ourselves. Perhaps we can help your people find a shorter path to the same realization. Perhaps, I agreed, though I suspect both our peoples have much to learn from each other. Thorne nodded. That's the foundation of any lasting peace, mutual respect and mutual learning. As we approached the space station, I found myself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought me here. From a conventional military commander to a student of human warfare to a peace negotiator, all in the span of a few short cycles. The Vrexian Empire had stood unchallenged for 20,000 cycles, our military dominance assumed to be an immutable law of the galaxy. Then humans had appeared labeled non-lethal in our threat registry, and proceeded to upend every assumption we had about warfare strategy and power. They had defeated us not through superior strength or advanced technology, but through a fundamentally different approach to conflict. One that prioritized precision over brute force, psychological impact over physical destruction, and ultimately peace over victory. As our ship docked at the station, I received one final message from Thorne. Good luck, Commander. Remember, this isn't about winners and losers. It's about finding a way forward that works for both our species. A very human perspective indeed. And perhaps I was beginning to think a wiser one than our own. The airlock cycled open, revealing the Centauri Accord mediators waiting to escort us to the negotiation chamber. Beyond them I could see members of the human delegation, Alexandra Reeves, Daniel Thorne, and others I didn't recognize. I squared my shoulders and stepped forward to meet them, no longer seeing primitive threats or non-lethal curiosities, but equals at the negotiating table. Species who had defeated the mighty Vrexian Empire, not through superior strength but through superior strategy. The galaxy had labeled them non-lethal and forgotten about strategy. A mistake we would not make again. As I extended my hand in the human greeting gesture I had studied, I realized something profound. This defeat might very well be the salvation of my species, by forcing us to reconsider our most fundamental assumptions about power and conflict. The humans had given us an opportunity to evolve beyond the limitations of our predatory nature. Commander Crave, Alexander Reeves greeted me, taking my offered hand. Welcome to the first day of peace. And as our delegations moved into the negotiation chamber together, I found myself genuinely hopeful that she was right. The war that began with a misclassification in a threat registry would end with a new understanding between species. The humans had taught us that true strength lay not in domination, but in the wisdom to know when to fight and when to seek peace. It was a lesson 20,000 cycles overdue.